The Newfie Halo 96 was one of the first keyboards I reviewed on this channel, along with its low-profile cousin, the Air 96. The Halo 96 was one of the best pre-built keyboards I had used at the time that I reviewed it, but it certainly wasn't perfect, and Newfie has been releasing V2 versions of several keyboards this year to address some of the issues with their originals. In this video, we've got the Halo 96 V2 to check out, and it's got the same upgrades as the Halo 75 V2 that came out a couple months ago, which I've already reviewed. Let's dig in and see if the upgrades equal the same results with the Halo 96. Before we dive in, I want to mention that Newfie sent me the Halo 96 V2 in exchange for an honest review. I was not paid to make this video, and Newfie has no input on my review. I do have an affiliate link in the description for you if you're interested in picking up the Halo 96 V2 and you'd like to support this channel. Well, this is my first video in my new recording space. I have relocated and it's not quite the way I want it to be just yet, but hey, I've got keyboards to review. And if you saw my review of the Halo 75 V2, then you already know a lot of things about the Halo 96 V2. Aside from the layout being different, of course, it's got all of the same upgrades from the original that were present in the 75 V2. But will my experience be the same? Well, one thing that's definitely not the same is that Newfie sent me a Halo 96 V2 with Cherry silent switches instead of one of their linear or tactile switch options. But don't worry, I'll give you a sound test with one of those regular switches in addition to these silent switches. Of course, we'll start with features and specs, and then we'll talk pros and cons. The Newfie Halo 96 V2 is a 96% layout keyboard with 99 keys and an ANSI layout. It is not currently available in an ISO layout. The construction is aluminum for the top frame and ABS for the case bottom. There are 5 color options including white, black, mojito green, blue lagoon, and sakura fizz, which is a light pink. The dimensions are 377 by 135 millimeters with a front height of 21.3 millimeters and a rear height of 31.9 millimeters. The weight is 1,150 grams or about 2.54 pounds. There are 2 position fold-out feet for a total of 3 typing angles. Connectivity includes Bluetooth for 3 devices with 125 Hz polling, 2.4 GHz with 1000 Hz polling, and USB-C wired also with 1000 Hz polling. Internal components include a palm plate, switch pad, foam between the PCB and the plate, gasket mounts on the PCB, and a silicone pad in the case bottom. The PCB is hot swappable and compatible with 3 and 5 pin switches. The stabilizers are plate mounted. Switch options include Mint and Raspberry Linear and Lemon Tactile, which are all Newfie and Gateron collaborations. There is also a silent switch option made by Cherry. The keycaps are MSA profile double-shot PBT with color themes to match the case color and shine-through accents on the home keys. There is a shine-through set of keycaps available for purchase separately. Backlighting includes full south-facing RGB, an LED light bar in the top left corner, and the halo lighting which shines through the perimeter case bottom. The battery capacity is 4,000 mAh with an estimated use time of up to 300 hours with all the lighting turned off and 6 to 90 hours with the lighting turned on depending on the brightness level. The Halo 96 V2 includes QMK firmware with VIA compatibility for customization on Windows, Mac, and Linux. There is also a physical switch for Windows and Mac layout modes. The Halo 96 V2 is available from Newfie for $139.95 US with Newfie switches or $149.95 with silent switches. All right, now let's talk about some pros and cons for the Halo 96 V2 as well as the major differences from the original. Of course, we'll start with the pros here. And first up, we have improved polling rates for the 2.4 gigahertz connection. And I did actually not have the same issue with the 2.4 gigahertz connection that I had with the Halo 75 V2. If you saw that video, then you might remember one of the cons that I shared about the Halo 75 V2 was that I had a little bit of bugginess with the firmware that was, for me anyway, it was specific to the 2.4 gigahertz connection. Well, I've been testing the Halo 96 V2 for over a week now, and I've been using the 2.4 gigahertz regularly, and I did not run into that same issue or any of the same issues that I had with the Halo 75 V2, so definitely good news there. Now, a pro that the 96 V2 has in common with the 75 V2, of course, is the improved or enhanced RGB lighting. The Halo RGB lighting, it's just a little bit more over the top than it was with the original. The original Halo line was unique for having that exterior Halo lighting, and the V2 line sort of takes it to the next level. The whole bottom of the case really lets the lighting shine through versus just a thin little strip with the original. So if you like RGB, if you're looking for a keyboard that has sort of standout RGB and isn't just the same as regular backlighting, then the Halo series, the V2 series, really brings that. Another pro would be improved typing feel. Now, they did not go all the way to the other side of the spectrum in terms of the firmness or softness of the typing feel. The original had a sort of a firm mounting with really no give to the typing feel. It did not have any flexibility, and the V2 series has made some changes here. We have a palm plate and we have a gasket mount, but the gaskets are on the PCB, not on the plate. They are like silicone button style gaskets. They're not the super squishy foam gaskets. So it's not like bouncy. It definitely doesn't have that like super, bouncy up and down movement to the whole assembly, but it is more cushioned and is a little bit more flexible than the original. And for me, that's a positive thing. That's a positive change. I consider it an improvement to have a little bit more of a cushioned feel. Of course, I have to mention the QMK firmware with VIA compatibility for remapping and macros, and it's just much more consistent of an experience compared to the original, which had a Newfie console, which was only available on Windows, and it was a pretty clunky experience to use it. Now you can use VIA on Windows, Mac, and Linux to reprogram, remap, add your macros, do whatever you need to do, so that's great. The battery life is also good with all the lights off. We have sort of a split story here on the battery life. We have a good battery life of 300 hours if you don't use any of the lighting at all. So if you want to use it wirelessly and you turn all the lighting off, you're going to get a good amount of use time out of it between charges, which is great. However, the story becomes less great once we turn the lighting on, and the lighting is one of the big appeals of this keyboard. So we'll talk about that in the cons in just a second. Another pro that it has in common with the 75 V2 are the switch options. Now that I've tried the silent switches, I can confidently say all of the switch options I think are very nice. The quality of all the switches, in my opinion, is great. I did not have any switches now, and now I've tested all of them. I've had a full set of all of the switch options in here. I've not had any switches that felt underlubed, overlubed, pingy sounds from the springs, none of those problems. They've been very consistent. I think that there's a good switch choice in there for just about everybody. The lemons are a little bit more of a snappy tactile versus a traditional brown switch, but they're not the like super heavy sharp bump of a Panda switch or like the Rose Glacier switches if you used those previously from Newfie. The mint and raspberry are nice linear switches that just have different weights. If you are more of a red switch fan, like a middle weight switch, then I would go for the raspberries. If you like a lighter weight, easier actuation force, then the mint switches would be the option. And these silent switches are also quite nice. They are pretty darn quiet. There's really no unpleasant sound. Sometimes silent switches to me have like a little bit of a scratchy sound to them. These really have minimized that, and these are Cherry switches, so these are not Gateron Newfie collaboration, so they're the sort of the one-off out of the set. Overall, I think if you want the nice RGB, but maybe you are going to use this in a public space or a workspace where you don't want to disturb other people, then these silent switches are a pretty nice option. Also in the pros, it has a great out-of-the-box sound. Now, of course, if you buy the silent switches, then the out-of-the-box sound is going to be pretty darn quiet. In terms of sound from the stabilizers, really nothing unpleasant here. I'm not getting rattles. I'm not getting anything out of the box that sounds like it needs fixing. There's no unpleasant resonances. There's no significant amounts of rattle anywhere. In general, good out of the box sound, which now I've come to expect from Newfie. And lastly, the quality of the keycaps is also nice. We have a nice full layer of double shot. They are PBT. They have a nice little bit of texture to them. They're not super smooth like ABS. The profile probably is more in the neutral space as far as my reviews go than pro or con. It's not a traditional Cherry profile. It's not an OEM profile. It's kind of like a Cherry profile height, but with a little bit of a different shape, a little more sculpting. Not everybody will love it because keycaps are very subjective when it comes to the profile. I personally find it comfortable to type on. I didn't have an issue with an excessive, amount of typing errors or anything. In general, the quality of the keycaps is nice. I don't have any issues or concerns with the consistency of the legends on the samples that I've been provided. And these are the same keycaps that you would get on the Gem 80 if you bought the optional keycaps. All right, now in that neutral sort of in-between space that might be a pro for some people, might be a con for some people, this is still a compact 96% layout. It is the Halo 96. So if you were hoping they were gonna come out with a 100% layout or an 1800 layout that gives you some separation between your arrow keys, your number pad, and the rest of your keys, you don't have that. It's still the exact same layout as the original. It is very compact. So if you feel like it'll be prone to errors to have your arrow keys sort of squished in there with your number pad and your other keys, then it still may not be the best layout for you. But that's not Newfie's fault. This is just a 96% layout, and that's what it is. Now I'm gonna mention the firmware bugs in the neutral space in this video. Now again, in the Halo 75 V2 video that I made, I experienced some firmware bugs with that keyboard. They have released a firmware update. I'm actually in the middle of running a little bit of a longer term test with that new firmware. Keep an eye on that video if you're interested in how the firmware updates have worked for me. But for this video, for the 96 V2, I haven't experienced firmware bugs. I didn't have issues with Bluetooth. I didn't have issues with 2.4 gigahertz, so it doesn't seem to have those issues to me. So I'm mentioning it in the neutral space. We've had a few keyboards come out in the past year from Newfie that have had some firmware bugs. Hopefully the Halo 96 V2 is free of those bugs, but only time will tell as people start to receive them. Fortunately though, my sample, I didn't have any issues. All right, let's get into a couple of cons for the 96 V2, and I really only have a couple things here. One is the battery life with the lighting on. This is where the battery life starts to get a little bit disappointing if you wanted or needed to use this wirelessly without keeping it plugged in, but you're really getting it for the great RGB lighting that it has. The battery life can be as little as 6 hours with all the lighting on if everything is on the brightest setting. That 6 hours, that's an accurate estimate. I didn't even get through a whole workday with the 2.4 gigahertz connected to my Windows laptop for my 9-to-5 job. All the lighting on the brightest setting. Didn't even get through the whole day before it died. So overall, the battery life with the lighting on feels a little bit short to me. So that's the split story between the great battery life it has with no lighting on and the less great battery life it has with the lighting on. The only other con that I have here is about the 2.4 gigahertz storage, and I had the same comment about the Halo 75 V2. The receiver is larger than the original. It's deeper, and this cutout isn't big enough for it. When you put it in there, it sticks out a little bit. It's just one of those little odd things that it'd be nice if they had increased the depth of that cutout so you could actually, keep it in there without it looking funny. It just looks a little funny to me to have it sticking out. So at the end of the day, would I recommend the Halo 96 V2? The answer there is yes, I would. The price is just a little bit higher than the original, but it was a modest increase, and I don't find it to be overpriced for what you're getting here. You're getting a really nice package if what you're looking for is something that stands out from the competition in terms of RGB lighting, more unique styling, and it's also got a premium feel. The original did as well, and the V2 retains that kind of premium feel. If you have the original, should you upgrade to the V2? Well, that really depends on your individual use case and whether you're happy with the original. The one big reason for me why I would upgrade from the original to the V2 would be if I'm a Mac user and I don't have a Windows computer, but I do want to do some remapping, maybe add some macros. If I want to customize some of the functionality of the Halo 96, to me would make it worth the upgrade if that's something you really want to do. You have a little bit better polling rate with the 2.4 gigahertz connection, but otherwise, you probably are good to just stick with your original Halo 96 unless everything adds up to just like a way better keyboard for you. So that'll do it for this video. Let me know what you think of the Halo 96 V2. Let me know if you get one for yourself and how you're liking it. Don't forget to subscribe to the Semi-Pro Tech and Gear channel, and while you're here, why don't you check out one of these videos? I'm sure you'll like it. Thanks everybody. See you next time.